Hello everybody, I'm Jardian, and today I'll be reviewing these lightweight sharpened comma that you've seen me make the past 2 or 3 videos on. If by chance this is the first video of mine that you're clicking on this, keep in mind that I did just make 2 videos extensively using these. For that reason, there's not going to be many cuts at the end of this, although I'll record them just for the sake of it. So, when it comes to these, well actually I'll start with the sheath since I have it on. As you can see, this sheath was the worst of the two. It had a hole through it, and the other side is cracked as well. This side is just especially bad with the point sticking out. So, it also doesn't have a clip or anything. It's not like the previous comma I reviewed. However, again, for the price, I'm surprised to even have a covering. I mean, these are genuinely fantastic for the price. Let me say that right off the bat. For one, I thought that these were going to break or at least start rattling. I usually reinforce my comma. However, on this one in particular, I decided not to as a sort of control. So this one had nothing done to it. It had the sloppiest uneven rivets. The cap on the top was bent backwards. So again, I didn't like it that much. But despite all that, and despite all of my cutting, I cut bottles, I cut all the pool noodles. I did that entire video clearing the path of this one only. And despite all that, it still has no looseness. Nothing's wrong with it. It got a bit rusty, which I wasn't considering when I was cutting the plants. And it did lose a bit of an edge. However, it's definitely still able to perform. And again, it hasn't lost its functionality. I thought absolutely these were going to break, and really just because of the price. You can get a set of these for about $16 depending where you buy them. And it's honestly very impressive. Normally when people write in reviews on products about sharpness, I never trust them. Usually a lot of people just don't know what they're saying, or they think everything's razor sharp or dull. But everybody said every time that these were extremely sharp, and I can say they weren't lying. These are one of the very few items I've ever received that straight out of the box they can pass the paper test. They can cut paper very easily, and again, just very impressive. So I took these out for bottles, as you'll see at the end of this video and my other videos, and I was very surprised by how well comma cut bottles. It was some of the easiest bottle cutting I've ever done, and I can absolutely say that if you want to cut bottles, these are the comma for you. Like, don't waste your time on the other ones. These are cheap. You get 2 of them in case one breaks, and it really does make things easy. You can swing it whatever way you want. It goes very well. Now, when it comes to the specifications, I measured very professionally with my yardstick gum, and the wooden handle, the part you can actually grab here, is 14 inches. The rest of it adds about 2 inches, so when you're carrying it, it's about 16 inches total. So it's a pretty good size. I've seen some bigger, some smaller. And I don't know about the weight, however, I can promise you it is not overly light or flimsy, but it's also not terribly heavy either. I definitely recommend, despite the durability, that you do what I did, and you give it a little love. So what I would do is pour glue all into this cap on the top. That's number one spot something might bend or break. And, oh yes, if you can see, in the side here when you remove the sticker, there's this empty area where the tang is. However, the tang only goes to about here. So there's all this empty space. I recommend putting a piece of tape down, pouring Gorilla Glue all through the top until it soaks in, taping there, and wrapping the entire thing. That really improves it, although at the same time I'm saying that, but this never had any issues, like I said. Variability is the one thing to worry about when it comes to these with any cheap item, as you just never know what you're going to get. Companies aren't going to spend a lot of time making these perfect when they're this cheap. For example, the riveting was completely different. This has these very uneven, very brute forced rivets where the wood is all splintered, and again, the spacer, the cap is bent backwards. However, on this one, everything was much better. The cap is straight, and the rivets, if you can see them, were a lot straighter. So again, variability. The markings on the blade might be very different depending which ones you get. That is a cool black line there. You'll see this in the images, and while I do believe it has a double bevel, very thin, don't worry about it. These things are so absolutely sharp that I promise they'll do anything you need them to. Well, I think I've said enough, so without any further ado, let's get to those cuts. This demonic creature Go. Go. Please. Go. Okay. So this is going with the grain of the arching target. This is the easier way to swing. So light swing. Excellent. And a harder swing. Completely in. Now against the grain of the arching target. Light swing. Still good. And a harder swing. Not bad. Yes, and if you were just curious about what these would actually do to a person, because bottles aren't a very good comparison to flesh, one day I was just cutting some tape down here when I turned away for a second and I accidentally missed. So this very, very light movement ended up actually, if you can see this, cutting about 2 inches through my jeans and into my leg. I'm going to pull up the image soon. If you don't want to see any gore or anything, just look away for a second. But yes, it passed through my jeans and my leg without getting any blood on the comma. I'm serious. Here's the image. My leg!